connection and opportunity all in one place. Come join the community. So text it now, don't wait in line. Ride for life. 949292905. That's 9492905.
They discovered it, they read it, and they applied it. It's the golden thread that connects the titans of the self-development industry, the source that spawned millions of millionaires, the original blueprint to success.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic. A classic.
And I love Think and Grow Rich. I love it. It's right here. I mean, it's one of my favorite books of all time.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This material is what changed my life. This is the material I study every day. From being an immigrant woman, coming from poverty, and really coming to America and literally achieving the American dream. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this man, for what he did for me and my family.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. The happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else?
Thoughts become things. And I always wonder, why did no one teach us this? Why did we not learn this in school? Why did we not learn this from our families? If you make your study a priority, your life will change.
And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you. There we go. Good morning. Welcome to Napoleon Hill Institute training. And I have a frog in my throat. Welcome Blaine Bartlett, who was in Las Vegas with me as well for the season 10 of Office Hours. There we go. Anyways, today's training is the amazing marketing training that I do, the psychology of marketing. And we are blessed to understand, there's a million great ideas, but if you can't get it to market, if you can't market it, there is a value. We're going to quickly remind you, we will be in Minnesota today. We will be in Austin with the Aspire Tour tomorrow. And then we have a mastermind with Tim Story in Newport Beach. So please join us. And we would love to host you in Austin. So anybody that would love me to host them in Austin at the Aspire Tour with the biggest names in business, just email me, david@dmeltzer.com. But back to our marketing training today. Blaine, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Got home late last night, as did you. So
yes. Well worth it. Well worth it. I get to see my
Absolutely.
wife for
Yeah.
an evening, and then get to move off to Minnesota and Austin, and be back again as well for the holiday weekend. As we are looking, you mentioned yesterday in office hours three different things: psychology, philosophy, and physiology, I believe,
Yep.
if I wasn't correct, three P's. And I believe all three are relevant to marketing. And this training is about specifically the psychology, but obviously the physiology and philosophy are applied to the psychology of marketing, because people buy on emotion for logical reasons. And, within that becomes these three P's. And one of the other things that we mentioned was the idea of how important attention is today. But Napoleon Hill really focused more on something, I think, that's importantly combined with the attention, which is the currency, the energy and motion. Attention is intention. What does that currency look like? What does that energy and motion look like? I have a mathematical equation in my marketing philosophy, which is what you pay attention to or get others to pay attention to and give intention to. Do, say, think, feel, and believe, which is that emotion tied to the logic, will equal the coincidences, the coinciding of what you desire. And this is truly for me a marketing philosophy. But let's start with attention before we get to Napoleon Hill's intention, the definition of purpose. Um, we're a little bit longer in the tooth. We definitely come from a traditional business background. There has always been a value in attention, but today, as Shakespeare stated, everyone has a capability of getting unbelievable amount of attention. What issues come up today because of the accessibility that we have to 7.6 billion people that possibly could be paying attention to our product, service, or solution?
For me, I think the greatest difficulty, and this is something that I've witnessed emerge, as you mentioned, we have kind of a traditional background experience in business. It's the lifespan of attention. Just
Mm,
it where we would have a full minute perhaps on a television, a traditional television show, back in the 50s to pitch our product as it were. And it was a three-channel opportunity. I mean, you've got ABC, CBS, NBC. That's what you had. Now we've got so many different channels, so many different delivery mechanisms, and the bite that I get to communicate has moved from 1 minute to 10 seconds. If I don't grab somebody in 10 seconds, and that's not to say that the hook wasn't there before, but the hook becomes the message. Yeah, in today's marketing, the hook becomes the message.
yeah, it's so interesting. We were with David Goldberg, who's an
Yes.
expert in prosody. And so he said something that really was surprising to me. He said, people make a judgment. The ambassador of first impressions is your receptionist at your business, but people make their first impression by the first word you speak, the
Yeah.
frequency, the tonation, the strength, the confidence, the comfortability you have, you know, the deep, strong voice. It is actually within the first word that people will make a judgment and go ahead and attach emotionally to whether they like, trust, want to do business with you, buy from you, sell for you. Um, some of the other stuff in this idea of attention is traditional. Things like speaking directly to a problem, making sure that you're of service or value. What are some of the other things that are similar today, considering the short attention plan, that the value obviously of the hook becomes far greater than it ever has been because you don't have time to articulate the reasons, impacts, and capabilities like in the past. But what are some of the other similarities today that are necessary in getting attention today?
Identity, yeah, is that thing me. There's the resonance occurs when identity is tapped into. And if the product marketing pitch, the hook, has a frequency that is associated with my sense of my identity, it's very subliminal, it's very subjective, but that resonance is almost impossible to not pay attention to. Yeah. If I've done my job well as a marketer.
You know what's so interesting in this idea of attention? I think there's two levels of attention. One is how critical it is to get the initial attention because there's so much noise and so many people. But to me, there seems to be a greater hunger once you get the initial attention of maintaining and sustaining attention because, our VIP dinners, the masterminds, the shows, I see people doing workshops that Dr. Joe and Tony Robbins, a week that people are spending giving attention to something they care about, that is speaking to an issue. And maybe some of the issue is exactly this issue that there's too much noise. I'm overwhelmed. I'm separate from, and that's why people want to be part of this polis, this social grouping. Do you see there's a trend, if we can get someone's initial attention, that actually people want to pay more attention for a longer period of time?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's true, David. And I think your meetups are a great example of this. The dinners are a great example of this. Part of what happens here is, how do people feel about themselves when they're in the presence of my marketing, in the presence of my service or my product? How do they feel about themselves? If I can tap into that dynamic and have them feel good about themselves when they're in the presence of my service, my product, my offer, they're going to keep coming back. There's repetition in that because, again, at a subjective subliminal level, I feel good about me. I'm the kind of person who would buy this. This now becomes a way of saying, from an identity perspective, I'm home. I'm home.
Yeah. And that brings up kind of the second lesson. And if anybody would like, people bound emotion for logical reasons, how to pay attention, just email me. David means beloved at D, first initial, Meltzer means servant. Let me be that beloved servant. As we're mentioning, email me, David at dmeltzer.com. But the second lesson is exactly about feelings. You've been speaking on stages for so many years. And one thing that is held true is that people won't remember, they won't pay attention to what we say, which is something we went over in a listening lesson yesterday on Office Hours, which was one of my favorites, by the way. Bradley killed it and, just dropping bombs, explaining things about how people hear or listen, the functionality of the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth. But people buy on those feelings, not the features, not the price even. Just like on stage, they'll remember how they felt. When you know this, what are some of the things that we can do in marketing that you have found to connect feelings so that they'll remember with your product, service, or solution?
I think the thing that works most effectively is story. Rather than going immediately to a pitch around features or distinctions, a bit of a story, and it doesn't take long to hook a story. But that story, people will remember the story before they remember the feature, before they will remember the advantage that this might bestow on me. They'll remember the story, and even if they remember don't remember the product's name, the story will be something that they will keep coming back to, and it will bother them because they can't remember the product that was embedded in the story. So they will actively go searching for the product, which is a fascinating dynamic from a psychological perspective.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's so easy to find products if you can remember the story, which is another advantage of storytelling today. And we had a guest yesterday on Office Hours. I keep coming back because it was such an extraordinary experience, even for me, who has done 10 seasons of it alongside of you, plus 890 episodes of it digitally. and you've been there since the beginning. But John Polo wanted to start when he started coaching with me, but also wanted to start the show. You got to know my story.
Yep.
And that story resonated with everybody on the panel because he picked a story that was so mass common about life cycle. And there wasn't one panelist that didn't get choked up. There wasn't one panelist that didn't have strong feelings towards the story. And once again, you know, we have about approximately 23 interviews each and every episode, day of filming 3 episodes. And again, that's the one that I remember that made me feel the strongest. And I know you and the other 2 co-hosts felt the same way. So in that storytelling, it's really interesting that you have this emotional outcome. He took us through the entire story and he gave us his emotional outcome, and we could identify and align with that. Is there, beyond making somebody feel, actually I'll move past that because it's so important to tell a story that moves people and pick a thing. You know, dogs are the most used characters in a commercial because just like the story that John Polo told, and it was about, you know, losing a loss, you know, a loss of someone he loved, which is common to every single person in varying degrees. Their own feelings came out. Dogs also evoke a mass feeling. And so when, you know, you're watching a commercial for some pharmaceutical company, look how many times they have a dog in there for no reason. The drug has nothing to do with dogs, you know, and so we want to remember by using even visualization. So if anybody would like to learn more about how people buy on feelings, not features, just email me, david@dmeltzer.com. It's an extraordinary marketing lesson that we can use in storytelling. The real traditional confluence is not just feelings, but why we want to do all of these things. And it's to align in trust. You know, I teach in pitching and in business and in marketing and in sales, this idea of trust. And for me, it's so important that it is the most critical thing. And the reason is I always tell people, if you're 100% credible, you literally could tell, and I've never reached 100% credibility, nor would I deserve that, by the way. But if you were 100% credible, all you would have to do is tell someone, buy my car for $600,000, and they would do it with no questions asked. That's what 100% credibility does for you in marketing and sales. So in that same line of thought, the more credible we are, the higher the statistical success, the less we have to communicate to get someone to buy the car for $600,000. And so trust to me is the most, even beyond emotion, even though people buy on emotion and feelings, as lesson 1 and 2 talk about, but people overlook credibility. So what they'll do is they'll not practice credibility. So they'll unintentionally create skepticism. And the minute somebody doubts what you're saying, even if your intentions are true, you may have embellished or oversold out of great hope and inspiration or excitement about the love of your product, service, or solution. But the minute you lose credibility, what do? They start looking for why not to buy. They take things that are true and start looking at them as, oh, that can't be true. Oh, I don't. And so this is why credibility is the foundation of influence. Where and how can we practice, I should say, this idea? Because it's just natural sometimes when we love our product to oversell, back end sell. Sometimes we inadvertently lie, manipulate, or even cheat our story. You know, and I'll give you an example because I do so many shows. I had a excited entrepreneur, startup say, my revenue's up 300%. Now, I trust what people say, so I have no problem vetting what they say. So I said, well, really, what was your revenue last year? $90. Now, that ruined everything else he ever was going to tell me. But what he told me was true, Blaine.
Yeah.
But that's a manipulation and overselling, a back end selling. You could even say it's a lie, but it's not a lie. And so, how can we help people to self reflect their own credibility to help them have the statistical success that the high credibility gives us, even beyond feelings?
That's a great question, and I love that example, because prima facie, it was true. I mean, it was up 300%. And that's the problem with statistics. Again, I'm gonna come back to the use of stories, and consistency. You are a master at consistency. I mean, and this is one of the mantras that you talk about. And people will begin to develop, and here's the fascinating thing for me. If I'm marketing well, what I end up developing is loyalty, which is a non-transactional function. If I'm marketing for the moment, what I'm developing is satisfaction. Satisfaction is easy to break. Loyalty is difficult to break. So if with consistency over time, what happens is people begin to feel, and again, it's targeted specifically. This is where niche marketing comes into play. There's that identity piece, how I feel about me when I'm in the presence of this service or product. All of a sudden now loyalty, it is me. There's that piece that comes into play. So you can stub your toe once in a loyalty scenario and okay, it's going to be fine. Yeah. You stub your toe once in a satisfaction transactional sort of a thing. It's kind of like all of a sudden you've inserted doubt. Yeah.
So
And
true.
this is the difficulty in using customer satisfaction metrics as opposed to customer loyalty metrics.
It is such a great point, and even within the context of the last show that we did, there was extreme weather across the country, and so many people did not make the meetup. So many people did not make the dinner, including me and Nick. Um, and yet, because of the consistent behavior and the trust in the community and the value of the experience,
Great
uh, there was it was different. It was different. There's a different person raising money for the charity, a different person emceeing the event, a different person that was there for the meetup that became a networking meetup. Not my normal ask me anything, but it all had value, and there was trust in the value in the community. If the consistency wasn't there, even as the leader, I would have had doubt. Oh my gosh, everybody's gonna, complain, that, they were oversold that I would be there. And instead there was just so much gratitude. And I thought it was, beautiful that it may have been a better experience without Nick and I, in some respects, which I, enjoy, that joy of missing out. And, the pride that I took in the fact that it wasn't about me, it was about this consistent experience that we're providing, this frequency that we're providing. And there wasn't one person there that isn't waiting for us to come back to Las Vegas to do it again, because the value in what we consistently do in the influence and credibility and trust as a foundation, that although we represented, we would be there at 5 p.m. and didn't get there till 8 p.m. Sometimes when mistakes are made, you can build credibility by the way that you react to it as well. And I think that was a perfect example for us. If anybody would like a credibility document, I have a perfect type of 5 to Thrive system of understanding credibility, emotional attachment, reasons, impacts, and capabilities, that utilizing credibility as a statistic that Blaine and I love, compared to 99% of all statistics are made up, which is my favorite. Speaking of being repetitive and consistent, you talked about repetition and consistency. This is truly what creates a belief. We're working through Napoleon Hill's intention of what we do, say, think, feel, and believe. A lot of people think of Napoleon Hill of just belief, but to establish a belief, you have to do, say, think, and feel in order to believe. And this is only achieved by repetition or consistent behavior. Why is that, Blaine? Is there a conscious continuum? Is there a physiological, psychological, or philosophy behind repetition?
There's a physiological dynamic in play, and and I forget exactly who the attribution should go to on this, but the saying is neurons that fire together wire together, and that has to do with the brain's biology, and that's how we create memories. It's how we create belief systems. Over time, the neurons, the tendites in the brain, begin to fuse together. They connect synapses and pathways for information to travel. And just like anything in nature, the path of least resistance becomes the path that is most preferred. And from a marketing perspective, repetition begins to carve a channel. And a channel is something that information can now default to when it begins to be activated. And the whole message doesn't have to come into play. Just, I mean, your jingle, that you started at the beginning of the show, the phone number jingle. All of a sudden, you don't need the whole jingle, but it starts to move. That's the way that belief systems are put into place. And from a marketing perspective, the reason that marketers use jingles, and then again, we're going to kind of go back into our ancient history here with television ads and whatnot. But jingles were used because they're easy to remember, in that idea of remembering creates a pathway. You wonder where the yellow went when you brush your teeth with Pepsodent. Now, that's a really old jingle, but that was used to sell toothpaste.
Yeah.
And it had embedded in it the message, the value, but it was easy to remember. And this is kind of where belief systems get created. Now, a memory is essentially a belief system. That's essentially what a memory is.
Yeah, so smart. 1-800 Cars for Kids. Donate
Yep.
your car today. My objective of having my jingle was to be able to have people like me be able to say 1-800 Car for Kids. Donate your car today, which I actually did because I could remember the number because of the jingle. And the reason is there's a conscious continuum. And if anybody would like exercise or guide on how to utilize repetition in a conscious continuum, and what I mean by that is that we have a cellular memory that's very short term and stupid. It just remembers for the day. And so, but it takes a minimum of 21 days to communicate with the subconscious and determinative alignment in the subconscious mind, which is 80% of our negative thoughts, by the way, that is repetitive all day long. It's an automatic remembrance into a quantum memory, which is the unconscious competency. And so determinative upon your genetic and energetic inheritance. So I'll use alcohol as an example. It frustrates me when it says 21 days till you can form a habit or change a habit. That's only in consideration. That's a minimum of what's in your subconscious mind and also your quantum being. That's why they have the 12 steps. That's why they have AA, because tons of people have been sober for years and they take one drink and they are back into their quantum habit, because sometimes it takes lifetimes to change the hard drive, the conscious competencies that we have. So there is a conscious continuum, but the first step of remembrance, recollecting, and reminding with the quantum, with the infinite, is consistent behavior, so that the daily memory is remembered, and that when we can attach it to feelings or attach it to music, which creates a feeling, we remember it much better. Just like you remembered something. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff in the 5th grade when that commercial was going on that you don't remember, but somehow you remembered the words there. But I promise you can quote, Hamlet or whatever they were teaching in the 5th grade. But this is the way that the conscious works. And the conscious is a witness. And how do we evoke all that exists today, which we do. Moving on, though, if anybody wants the conscious continuum exercise or guide, just email me, david@dmeltzer.com, david@dmeltzer.com. And going into, if I can here, my next note of the day here, and I'm having trouble with my there we go. Okay. Which is apropos, right? Clarity converts confusion, and confusion will be repelled when we are clear, harmonized, and focused. I would say clarity, spectrum, and strength of signal are what allow us to have this statistical success. Where do people fall down? You know, there's so many people that are in love with their product, but when they tell you about it, even in their marketing materials, you have no idea what they do. I mean, how many times when we're coaching, mentoring, teaching, or on a TV show, Blaine, are you like, hey, sounds great, but I have no idea what you do. And we're stuck because there's no clarity. What are some of the things you've learned about this?
Yeah, well, the simple one is a confused mind never acts. You know,
Yes.
we'll just start with that. And if my marketing message is so cluttered, and this is the signal to noise ratio, yeah, you mentioned this just a moment ago. I want the message to be crystal clear so that there is no doubt about what is up. And what is up has to do with benefit, not features and advantages. The marketing messages that don't work will confuse the story that I want to deliver the message through with the actual act of marketing. The story is a carrier wave. But if the story is so convoluted or so filled with stuff, the core of the message doesn't get through. So I want to be very specific about what's the carrier wave that is being, linked, and directed here. And oftentimes fewer words are a lot better than a whole lot of words.
Yeah, it's so true because a clear message has a greater spectrum. It reaches more people, but it also has a stronger signal for people to remember. And so, for me, it's important that you have confirmation because you need to remember, that the leading into the confusion. Nobody acts on confusion, but they also don't buy from you. But even the more clear it is, the more people sell for you, even if they don't buy from you. The key to the success of building our community has been people buying, showing up for us, but also selling for us.
Yep.
There's so many people that are in our shows, masterminds, meetups, holding courts, interviews that haven't ever talked to our team, but have talked to people that are in our community. So they're buying from you and selling, because if there isn't a clear message, they can't repeat it themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That simple message is repeatable by others, in which creates an exponentiality to the message, to the marketing. And it's one in which is the guaranteed foundation of a successful company. Companies like Apple, you and I have probably sold more Apple products because they have a clear message of, hey, this product does this amazingly well. And I know in my own personal life, I've never been paid by Apple, but I've sold millions of dollars of Apple products, and I was CEO of Samsung's phone division. So you can imagine how clear that message is in their branding, in their taglines, and which leads us to the last, their value. Value. Service is the most powerful marketing strategy because it allows it to thrive. It is what, beyond clarity, true value is what will allow people to sell for you, give you that exponential. I sold one product. Every product I sell, somebody sells 10 people my product because of value. You're not going to believe the deal I got. You're not going to believe what this thing does. You're not going to believe it gives me more of what I like, more of what's working, more of what I know. It takes away what I don't like, what's not working, or I don't know. Oh, I got to get that. And here, especially because of the nature of the virtual side of things today, when we talk about going viral, it was very difficult on TV for it to go viral in a fast way.
Yeah.
Now it takes a matter of seconds and 50 million people, right? I still blow my mind. I think my biggest video has 53 million views. If that held a product other than imagine how many people would be ordering that product. If I had some sort of hat or something that resonated, and that's why 53 million, they were not sharing the value of my statement, which they love the value of my story. That's why I went viral.
That's it.
Right. But if it was a product, you could imagine how strong of a marketing tool that is. Service is the most powerful strategy. You have lived your entire life of service and of value. Why is that, though? Why would value trump all of these other lessons?
I'm going to come in. The value of service will trump them all, I think, because Well, we'll go, full circle. Identity. I want to believe I'm a good person. Okay. And I think that's germane to everybody on the planet. I want to believe I'm a good person. And if the values proposition taps into that identity and there's a sense of belonging, I want to belong to that tribe. The Edelman surveys that continue to track what companies are doing in terms of social responsibility, those sorts of things. People will buy far more print, and this is particularly true of the younger generations. They will typically buy and frequent companies that are doing things that are in alignment from a values perspective with the consumer. So if I know that you as I mean, and I think that our work with the Unstoppable Foundation, the philanthropic work with the different charities that we work with,
Napoleon Hill.
that taps into a sense of belonging and identity, and it also taps into a value, the service value. You're not just taking my money to get rich. You're doing something with it. Money is energy. Where's that energy being targeted? What's that energy actually producing? What's it being designed to build? Those sorts of things come in. And I'm a good person. I want to be part of that.
I love
And
it.
that's
And
kind of what that comes into.
service is everything. If you can articulate that value to exceed what you're asking for, the statistical success would be great. And if anybody would like the exerciser guide on the value, the value of service as the most valuable currency in marketing, in the psychology, the physiology, and philosophy of marketing, which this training is about, email me, david@dmeltzer.com. Before I let you go answer some questions, Blaine, so I can get on my next plane to get to Minnesota, I want to remind everyone that people buy on emotion for logical reasons. That trust and credibility is truly the foundation of all influence. That repetition, consistency will create belief of what we do, say, think, and feel. That clarity will strengthen your signal, widen your spectrum, will convert. And remember, as Blaine says, that nobody acts when they're confused. And that means in this case, they're not going to buy. Understand that the value, the service is the most powerful of all the philosophies, psychologies, and physiologies that exist in marketing today. And if you do so, and I promise this, you'll understand the psychology of marketing, the physiology attached to it, and the philosophy that we shared today. If anybody would like that, exercise guides and books, once again, remember, there's no music to it. Remember, beloved servant, beloved David @D, first initial, Meltzer servant. Email your beloved servant, david@dmeltzer.com. Inherent in that is the lessons of marketing that we taught today, david@dmeltzer.com. But I promise with these exercises, guides, and books, you will make a lot of money for the sake of helping others and having fun. And if you do that, I promise you one thing, you will be happy. And if you're happy, that will make Blaine and I happy. God bless everyone. Please reach out. If you're in Minnesota, give us a reach out. If you're in Austin, Texas, I would love to host you at the Aspire Tour. Give you a VIP ticket to that, or come and join Tim Story and I in Newport Beach at our mastermind. Over 200 cities. I also want to thank Blaine Bartlett for being consistent and showing up. He got home late last night and was up here to serve our community in a consistent, repetitive manner at 5 a.m. And so, Blaine, I hope you have a nap in store for you today. Send my love. Thank you for taking questions from the community. God bless everyone. Remember, be more interested than interesting. Be kind. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. Hit it, Gigi.
I can hear you. Yes. There we go.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Fantastic. So the number two, the curiosity started. Please unmute yourself and kick us off with the first question. difficulties, I'll pass it over to Allie for the time being. Allie, feel free to unmute yourself for.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, Blaine.
Hi, Allie. Good to hear you again. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Question for you. I love this training. Is if repetition wires identity into the nervous system, how does someone consciously break patterns that once created safety or success, but now are limiting their growth and who they're becoming?
Great question. You break it the same way you built it. You start with small incremental steps that are repeated over time. Basically, what you're doing is redesigning and reconfiguring an existing paradigm. And we'd like to have a silver bullet or a switch that we could flip that would reconfigure it. But the rewiring of those neural pathways takes a little bit of time to accomplish. So you start with a small step, that doesn't create a lot of resistance in the process. Make it as small as you possibly can, that is still going to cause the movement that you need to have in order to get what you say you want, which is going to be new behavior, most likely. But and then link it to, and James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. The way that I found that it works most effectively is you link it to an existing process, an existing thing that you're already doing. And, when you can not have to add something new, it actually becomes a little easier to do. I'm already doing this, so I'll just kind of, tweak it with this little adjustment, sort of a thing. So if you're, great example here, I think if you're trying to, a great example, a physiological one, and I've done some work with clients where they have had some physical issues, and so they're rewiring their brain a little bit and brushing their teeth. Everybody brushes their teeth. So while you're standing in front of the sink brushing your teeth, just stand on one leg for 30 seconds. Then stand on the other leg for 30 seconds. You're already standing there. So you just add in that extra little piece. And the next thing you know, you're beginning to recalibrate your sense of balance. And, this has been a very simple little fix for some of the older folks that I work with that are having some physical difficulties.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, just to take it, a step further, how do we discern the difference between a pattern that we feel like is who we truly are versus maybe a pattern that we have repeated over time for a long period of time that feels like us? How do we make that discernment?
Again, great question, Allie. I love your questions. The giveaway here is who we really are. No pattern is who we really are. It's what we've learned to use to achieve a certain end at some point in time. So the pattern is just a habituated way of responding to an environmental need, to a need that we have in a specific environment. So who I am is free of that clutter. And I mean clutter in the sense of it can either facilitate what it is that I'd like to have in a clean way, or it can actually get in my way. I stumble over it. So again, you're just looking through the lens of, when I look, the way that this I think works most effectively is you look through the lens of, is this working for me or is it not working for me? When the answer to the question is it's not working for me comes up over and over and over again with more frequency, that's a signal that I need to start doing something a little bit different. I need to start changing the pattern. And the way that we change the pattern is to interrupt it. Interrupt the pattern long enough, you can insert something new. As long as the pattern is running at a full tilt, typically unconsciously, anything that you try to do differently is going to get kicked out. It will get continuously kicked out until you interrupt the pattern long enough to insert something new and give that something new a way to begin to grow.
Thank you so much, Blaine. A lot to unpack. Appreciate you.
You bet, Ali. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you so much, Allie, for kicking us off. And for our next question, I'm going to pass it over to Mike, who's patiently waiting on stage. Mike, happy Wednesday. Feel free to unmute yourself and carry us on with the next question.
Love it, Blaine. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike.
With you the last day or so, from dinner to filming to everything in between. It was a good treat for me to be with the legend himself. So I love being with you. Thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure. I love being with you. You handled it all with great aplomb. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. I love it. And to that point of watching you, I saw you, I feel like, reach a state of flow. So my question to you is, how do you recognize when you're operating in flow, and what practices help you maximize that momentum without forcing it?
Ooh, that, a lot to unpack with that one. Here's an interesting way to think about flow. It has nothing to do with me. When I'm in a flow state, the sense of Blaine Bartlett disappears, and this is I'm just present. I'm just present at that point in time. When I'm concerned about how I'm being perceived, when I'm concerned about how I'm coming across, when I'm concerned about am I doing it right, I literally will break the flow state. When I just step into it and I just let, whatever needs to come out, come to and through me, I basically become a conduit. I'm not the message. I become the conduit for the message, if, from a metaphoric perspective, if I could use it that way. But the more I can get myself, this identified self out of the way, the easier it is for me to maintain contact with the current that the river is generating, and that's the experience of being in flow. I don't have to paddle against it. I don't have to overcorrect.
Don't paddle against it. Don't overcorrect. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you, Blaine.
You bet,
Lots
Mike.
to learn there. Lots of lessons built into that as well. Thank you so much.
You bet.
And Blaine, for our next question, I want to make sure that we show some love to the chat, as we have so many of our friends that are joining us on the webinar side, as of course we are live on all platforms. And this question is coming from Karen Weaver. And she asks, how do we stand out in a world of distractions and shiny objects?
Every one of us, Karen, is unique. There will never be another Karen Weaver. Ever in the history of the universe, there will never be another Karen Weaver. There may be somebody else out there that has your name or that name, but the uniqueness that you are is something to celebrate. So how do you stand out in a world of distractions and shiny things? You claim, this is going to sound abstract as hell, and I apologize for that, but you have to be able to claim who you are. And when you can claim and own who you are in your unique flavor, you will stand out. You can't not stand out. And then you polish it. You just find a way to polish that and to continue to bring it to the forefront. Not from an egoic perspective, but from a recognition that you are a unique spiritual being that has a gift, a unique gift. And this is, I think, probably the key to this, Karen, is what's the gift that I represent? What's the gift that is coming through me that I want to present to the world? That's how I stand out. The rest of the stuff is as you point out in your question, the rest of it's just a distraction. So I want to be able to bring that uniqueness. And from a writing perspective, they would call that, how do you find your voice? Yeah. So if you're just and if I'm playing a musical orchestra or in a musical orchestra, or if I'm a pianist, I can play the notes. But when I begin to really bring me to the music, all of a sudden that piece of music stands out in a way that nobody else has ever played it. And it will resonate at that point in time when it's imbued with who I am. So that's how I stand out. It's not about copying. It's not about comparison. It's about claiming and owning that uniqueness that can never be replicated.
Check, making sure you can hear me, Blaine.
I can hear you just fine. Thanks, Nick.
Beautiful. That's going through a little dead zone there on my way to the airport as well. But thank you so much for answering Karen's question. And Karen, I want to thank you again for everybody that is joining us online on the webinar. If you have a question for the double B, that's Blaine Bartlett. You can reach him at blainebartlett.com. Just go ahead and put your question in the chat for all of our friends here in the Breakfast with Champions, which is the greatest room and community on Clubhouse. If you're on stage and have a question for Blaine today, please just put a quick note in the room chat. And of course, if you're in the audience, all you have to do is use the hand icon in the lower left-hand corner of your screen to request to join the stage. And we will, of course, bring you up. Now, for our next question of the day, we have a new friend up on stage who's patiently waiting, Marco Antonio. My friend, happy Wednesday. Always good to have you here. Why don't you unmute yourself and carry us out with the next question?
Morning, Nick. Morning, Blaine.
Morning, Marco.
Blaine, I was wondering, because, I learn about different topics, and sometimes I want to dissect them and understand them more and ask better questions. Do you have a framework that you use to dissect certain topics so that you can understand them better?
I don't know that I would call it necessarily a formal framework. I'm going to, actually, if I'm trying to understand something a little better, I want to be able to formulate questions. Questions will serve two purposes. One is the obvious, which is to, I ask a question, I get information back in return. But questions will also point direction. I have to go looking some direction. I have to go in some direction to find the answer to the question. So I want to find ways to ask questions that will point me in a direction, ideally that is answering what's the first cause, what's the foundation of this thing that I'm actually working with, that I'm trying to explore. Kind of where did it come from? What was its origins? What's the best use case? So I start exploring with those sorts of questions rather than how's it put together. Well, I think a lot of people, when they start exploring new ideas and whatnot, how's it put together and how does it apply to me, are the questions that they will work with. I want to actually take it a little bit deeper. Can I find out the first use case? Where did it come from? What was it intended to do initially? How has it morphed over time? And what was the causation that created that morphing process? So that it now has a different way of showing up than it did when it was originally formulated. Those sorts of things give me a much more fulsome understanding of what it is that I'm actually trying to learn or experience or play with. If that, hopefully that helps a little bit. But I don't have a formal framework per se, where I just kind of plug it in, like into an AI platform with, I've got my prompts. That's not what I'm thinking of here. It really is about formulating high quality questions that will point direction as well as provide information.
That actually is very helpful. I appreciate that. That's kind of what I was looking for. Is sometimes I have a difficulty just formulating some great questions to dig a little deeper, and I realized I'm not the only one that has a challenge with that. So was wondering what your process was to formulate those questions, and that gives me some insight, so appreciate it.
I used to drive my mother crazy when I was a kid. We'd go to a new place, and if there was cupboards or drawers or something, I was always opening them up. Curiosity is the short answer here. I want, what's behind the door, and I've always found ways to continue to curate curiosity, and I don't have a more sophisticated answer than that, Marco Antonio. It's just I'm curious. I'm really curious. It's how was this put together? Why would somebody go to the trouble to do this? Kind of what was in their mind when they put this together? Those sorts of things. I'm an insatiable reader. I love reading very eclectic things. And one of the things that I've learned in my reading journey is that the dots get connected in some fascinating ways if I start reading Yeah, and I'll use it reading as an example. If I start reading outside of the domain that I'm actually trying to find an answer in, so yeah, if I've got a business issue that I'm dealing with a client, I may all of a sudden, just have this epiphany, this idea that comes into play here about something that I had read in a biography that I had just finished on Leonardo da Vinci and his bicameral mind. Just kind of, how did he see things? And there was something in there that just kind of resonated. And now it's applicable to this business issue that I'm dealing with my client. But I want to have the broadest possible uh, access to various points of view. I mean, I'll never know everything, obviously, but I want to have the facility to be curious about where could I find that answer? Where could that come into play? What dot could get connected in a way that is different than I'd ever imagined it being connected? And what would be the result if that happened? Those sorts of things, kind of come into mind for me.
Thank you. Very insightful.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, as always, Mr. We have time for one, maybe two more questions here. So I'm going to pass it over to everybody's favorite producer and our two favorite letters of the alphabet, which are GG. So GG, happy Wednesday. Thank you for all your help, as always. Unmute yourself and carry us on with the next question.
Happy Wednesday, and thank you, Nick, for those kind words. So my question is relating to this training. Is the famous idea, and it's proven over and over again, is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. I want you expand on that.
Well, I think the easiest way to answer that question, Gigi, would be to use a hardware example. There was I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, as a kid, and there was a hardware store called Quackenbush's, and they'd been around forever. I mean, when I was frequenting the store, it was about 80 years old, and as a kid, I loved, and I still do. I love going into hardware stores. But here's the point that I want to illustrate around this. If I wanted to buy a drill bit, a 1/4 inch drill bit or a 1/2 inch drill bit, I can go and I can find a lot of different drill bits, and I can get lost in trying to figure out which drill bit is going to be the best drill bit. And as long as I'm just looking for drill bits, I can get confused about which one is going to be the prettiest one, or the one that has the longest life cycle to it, which all would be legitimate considerations. But what I'm really after is not a drill bit. What I'm after is a hole. I want something that will create a 1/2 inch hole in this piece of work that I'm doing. So I'm looking for that result. The mechanism of drill bit is the way that I achieve an elegant hole. Okay. So from a marketing perspective, that's one way that I begin to position what it is that I'm offering, is I focus on, you want a 1/2 inch hole? I've got the best thing here in the world to create a 1/2 inch hole for you. And then we can talk about the features and advantages of it. But I want to keep the focus on, you said you wanted a 1/2 inch hole. Yeah. Drilled into this piece of wood. This is what will make that happen for you. So that kind of an analogy actually comes into play here from a marketing perspective. The story needs to be able to link back to the whole, the product that it is that you're trying to produce.
So that's reverse engineering. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, as always, for the way that you show up, not just in person, and of course, all around the world, and even here virtually as well. This is going to wrap up what has been today's incredible training, the psychology of marketing. And Mr. Blaine, before I let you go and close out the room by, of course, inviting but not obligating everybody to come and join us in person, why don't we remind everybody where they can get in touch with you? I know they can, of course, reach out and visit your website, which is blainebartlett.com. But of course, any final messages or anything else that you would like to share?
that's the place to go for all kinds of resources. There's a lot of stuff up there that I make available. So feel free to poke around. We've got documents, we've got videos, we've got all kinds of stuff there. There's a new community that we are putting together right now that is a repository of a lot of the work that I do in the leadership field, and there will be some information on the website about that. Also, David's got the Playbook podcast, and David and I also do Thursdays office hours, the Soul of Business edition of Office Hours, the digital version. So tune in on Thursdays for that. And I also do a weekly podcast, The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. You can find that on all of the regular channels. So I'd love to be able to have you drop in for a listen and recommend it to somebody. And BlaineBartlett.com. All of that stuff will be available there. Moving possibility into reality. And then Nick, you guys travel safe on your way to Minnesota this week. Okay.
See you next week on Wednesday for the next edition of our Napoleon Hill Institute training. And in the meantime, I want to remind everybody, whether you are online on the webinar or live here in the Breakfast with Champions, if you would like the guide and exercise from today's training, the psychology of marketing, all you need to do is email David directly, david@dmeltzer.com. Once again, that is just David, his first name, which means beloved, at D, first initial, last name Meltzer, which means servant.com. Let him be your beloved servant by getting the guide and exercise in the psychology of marketing. And if for any reason you don't have a copy of David's book, make sure to throw that into the email as well, as David would be happy to send you a copy of his book, sending you a copy, signing a copy, and even paying for shipping. If it is free, it is we people. Once again, just David dmeltzer.com. And of course, we are on tour as we close things out here. We are hitting over 200 cities every single year and inviting everybody in our community to come and join us in person. Of course, coming into those cities and putting on what we call a car wash, which is the addition of a community meetup, which Blaine had mentioned, holding court, or even one of our VIP dinners for charity that we spoke on Minnesota, and would like to come and join us this afternoon and this evening, please reach out to me directly, Nick, NIC @dmeltzer.com. And then after Minneapolis, it'll be off to Austin, Texas, at the Aspire Business Tour, where we would love to host you for the day. Of course, ending on a car wash while we are in Austin, and then closing things out in Newport Beach, California, with the incredible Mr. Tim Story for the May edition of our mastermind. Now, for all of these locations, invites, and of course, the reminders on where we're going to be, in order to receive those, all you need to do is text us at area code 949, next 3 digits 298, last 4 digits 2905 to get those reminders and invitations, but not obligations. We will, of course, be back here in the Breakfast with Champions this upcoming Friday at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for David's Free Friday trainings, which he has been doing for over 28 years. But in the meantime, have an incredible rest of your Wednesday ahead. And as we always say, be more interested than interesting, and be kind. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. Hit it, Gigi.
Wanna know where David's gonna be? Get invites, updates, and community. When he's in your city, you won't miss a thing. Just text the number, let your phone ring, 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 ring. 949-298-2905. That's 949-298-2905. Events, connection, and opportunity, all in one place. Come join the community. So text it now, don't wait in line. 949-298-2905.
They discovered it, they read it, and they applied it. It's the golden thread that connects the titans of the self-development industry, the source that spawned millions of millionaires, the original blueprint to success.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic. A classic.
And I love Think and Grow Rich. I love it. It's right here. I mean, it's one of my favorite books of all time.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This material is what changed my life. This is the material I study every day. From being an immigrant woman, coming from poverty, and really coming to America and literally achieving the American dream. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this man, for what he did for me and my family.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. The happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else?
Thoughts become things. And I always wonder, why did no one teach us this? Why did we not learn this in school? Why did we not learn this from our families? If you make your study a priority, your life will change.
And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you.